It's the fun of being creative, of acting, of immersing yourself in a character, and the fun of sort of seeing a story emerge sort of before your eyes that you had a hand in making.
Story games are games where we create a story through the process of playing the game.
Some people say it's just all role-playing games, that story games is just another word for role-playing games, which I think is a very unuseful definition because then you already have a word for that. When I say story games, what I mean is games where instead of being in like a traditional game, you have your character and you're kind of invested in the success of your character. That in story games, we're working together to in fact make a successful story, something that's an interesting story.
You not only get to write the story, but you get to act out all of the parts in the story, and that story is made from bits and pieces of everyone who's sitting with you. It's a collective imagination.
We're actually sitting down with a group of people and we all have our different roles in terms of coming up with the story. Perhaps we are each in charge of a particular character. Perhaps we take turns deciding what kind of scene is going to happen now, like a scene in a play. And the rules of the story will then give us procedures to follow to make that creation of story a spontaneous and joyous experience for all involved.
Story games allows you to bring back elements of let's play pretend, let's play make-believe that you probably had when you were a kid, that you did without rules or a system or a structure or a book. It gives you the freedom to go back to that and remember why that was important in like forming who you were and why it was just fun as a way to spend time with your friends. But it also gives you more of the structure around it too, so it feels maybe more productive than it did when you were a kid.
You suddenly are now in the seat of being an author. You're being creative. And the weird thing is that most people, they are not called upon to be creative on a day-to-day basis at all.
Stories are a way of sharing the human condition with other people. They make us feel like we're not alone. They help to build community. They help us to understand people that are different from ourselves.
It's how we sort of interpret the world. We look at the world, we break it into stories, turn it into stories, and pass those stories on to people as a sort of way to teach lessons. Something really old. It's like built into at least some of our genes.
It's a cultural tradition in almost every culture that's older than time, and without even realizing it, you might be waking part of yourself up that you didn't know was asleep.
Most people have a pretty good sense of drama and of what people do and of characters.
I think there's something really magical about not only telling stories, but creating them, and creating them collaboratively almost as like a really important community building exercise.
In some ways, the most fascinating parts of play is to watch people figure out how to communicate with each other and how to come together.
There's this natural alchemy that happens between everyone's ideas that's really wonderful and lovely to see.
Not only are we creating a story that may or may not live beyond these 4 hours, but there's this other level of really touching emotional experience that you're sharing.
When everyone is really focused there on that story together and then something happens that's really funny or something happens that's really sad or something happens that is really shocking or surprising, everyone knows and everyone feels it all at the same time. And that kind of shared emotional experience to me is really a sign of success. It's like, you know, the game's going well.
It's hard to like pin down and say, this is what you're gonna get from this game, but when it happens, you're like, oh yeah, this is so, I don't wanna rock the boat. This is this magical moment where we're all just building on each other's ideas, but also like, it's really beautiful and really magical and like intimate. You know, you're like, I feel like I'm getting to know these people in ways that I can't get to know other people.
Frankly, I have never been more moved by story, by anything that I've seen on television or in a movie theater or in a book than I have been just with what I've created with my friends sitting around a table.
It's incredibly rewarding. I mean, it's super fun. Play more. Less talk, more play. More play.